That's a Dana 24, guys. That's my boat. And we're gonna go for a little field trip in it. This is our COVID California history class. And we're gonna talk about Richard Henry Dana while sailing in a Dana 24. Boat's the Alert. Dana came out here in the Pilgrim, went home in the Alert. Richard Henry Dana is an important guy. California really respects him. There's 3 Danas in California. There's the Dana Mountain up in near John Muir Trail. That's a geologist cousin much later. Too later. But then you have a Dana that's up in Tacoma, came out here in the 1820s and lived and owned a rancho. And then you have Richard Henry Dana Jr., who is the author of 2 Years Before the Mast. And we have down here in San Diego many things devoted to Dana. And then there's, of course, Dana Point. And the book is a great book. And so we're going to talk about that framework for the book. I'm giving you passages from the book of when he goes to Monterey, when he goes to Santa Barbara, when he goes to Dana Point, when he goes to San Francisco, when he's here in San Diego. But I'd like to give some framework for that today. This is Dana there. See, this is my Dana 24. That's him there. That's what it looks like inside here. A little kitchen, nice little setup. Very, very tiny little boat, but very pleasant. It's a very seaworthy boat, and it's built in honor of Richard Henry Dana. Okay, we're motoring out of our little mooring field here. People live aboard here. It's inexpensive to keep your boat moored here. I'm on a teacher salary, and I can afford to use boat. Sailing is in San Diego still something that's available, and it's a beautiful way to get involved with what is the California maritime experience of, especially under the Indians for thousands of years, the Spanish, then the Mexicans, and the earliest Americans before the United States folks, before the railroads come in. California's a maritime experience, and so that's why Dana's book is so important. It gives us a view of the maritime experience. And is it a beautiful view? It's this wonderful stuff about sailing, wonderful descriptions of getting out in and out of storms and anchorages, and you get the dynamic appreciation of Point Loma. And Point Loma is this stretch here that we're going to be sailing by today. And your Point Loma Nazarene University. This is an arm that stretches out and creates San Diego Bay behind it. San Francisco Bay and San Diego Bay are the only 2 places really you can create a year-round, safe, secure harbor. And so Dana writes about that, and he sees San Diego as a great future as a port, on the Pacific Ocean. One of the things that Dana misses is that Dana hates San Pedro for a number of reasons, but San Pedro will become the great port of the Western North America, Eastern Pacific Ocean. And as the great port, San Pedro develops as the harbor of Los Angeles, and Los Angeles will become the great city of California. San Diego and San Francisco sort of take a back seat, especially San Diego. So Dana has a sort of view of California long before the technology comes to create California as an integral part of the rest of the world. For Dana, it's the far side of the world. And for a long time, and the way to understand California, and we've developed this already in the class, the way to understand early California is to understand it as the far side of the world, as a place that is very isolated. It is less isolated than Manila, Philippines, because the Philippines, it's easier to get from Mexico City to the Philippines than it is to get from Mexico City up to here. And it'll be a project to create a port first in San Blas, and then to create a integrated network of ships that will come up here and and service the California coast. So that's the great project of Spain, and California will always be this isolated corner out on the edge of the world until you really get the railroad coming in. Overcast today, which is nice for this video, I think, because I don't want to look into the sunshine. And then good wind. I have cut a rig which has 2 foresails, but I've only put up the staysail, the smaller sail. One of the great things about Dana's book is that Dana represents the 2 years before the Mass is one of the great books of the Jacksonian era. Jacksonian era is when the dignity of labor, is a big deal, and democracy, and born in a log cabin, become president of the United States, and you don't have to be the college-educated, amazing intellect or anything. No, there's a real dignity to being a sailor. Sailboats are highly technological, ropes and pulleys, mechanical advantage, all this sort of stuff going on. Winds and meteorology and currents and all sorts of navigation issues, and so this is a high-tech field, and every sailor has got a job that's essential at certain, especially crisis moments, like when you're tacking or you're handling a storm or you're upping anchor. And Dana does a great job of portraying the dignity of being a sailor. It's not about the sort of like drunkenness, prostitution, gambling that you got in some other books, and other books had all the dignity only of the officers and stuff. No, it's the dignity of the before the Mass, those people up there. And so it's a great book for Jacksonian America in general, and it's as a book of Jacksonian America. He is coming out here when Jackson is president. He's coming out here in 1830, arrives in January of 1835, and we'll go home at the end of 1836, okay? So, great, important years in the Mexican government of California. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, we're coming into Scripps Institute here with the blue-hulled vessels. Sally Ride's over there, and then this is the smaller one. There's the Sproul, and then the bigger one's the Ravel. They were very important for establishing, various developments of UCSD. Got a good wind here, buddy. Okay, but this is the area where the hidehouses were that you'll read about. And Dana hung out with the Hawaiians, and the Hawaiians were under that big concrete building there, that Scripps building. The Russians had built an oven, a big igloo-style oven to cook bread there, but then abandoned it, and then Hawaiians came in. I'll talk about these Hawaiians a little bit more, but this area here, the point there is about 400 feet tall, and over the top of it is the Pacific Ocean's on the other side, and then this is the arm that then creates us as a place to anchor and a shelter, and it's fairly shallow in here, and this is where Dana and everybody anchored. This was the port of San Diego during the Spanish and Mexican early American period. It's here where when the attacking force came in from the U.S. Navy, they anchored here, and then they took what was called the La Playa Trail, the beach trail, which is now Rosecrans Boulevard, all the way into Old Town, where there was no fight, but the United States took over California. So this is a very historic little spot here, and the Navy has a bunch of it. There's submarine base up there, and then you have the Scripps Institute. And we're going to head out past Ballast Point there, which is the natural point where everyone had to come in past Ballast Point, creating this very protected little harbor. Okay, let me give you a little bio of Dana. A very interesting kid. Comes out here as a college kid from Harvard. So here's the story, and I'll add in a lot of stuff that's not in the book. What happened is that Dana's born into a very important family, a sort of culturally significant family in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Boston area. And his grandfather was the ambassador to Russia, during the Revolutionary War, trying to get money to come to help the United States win the war. And so the Dana family and the Adams family are very tightly knit. And John Quincy Adams's grandson, Charles Francis Adams, writes the first biography of Richard Henry Dana. And Dana becomes an important lawyer, important abolitionist. This is before the Civil War, very antagonistic to slavery. Dana writes about slavery on the boat, very interested in power relationships. He's writes this while he's in law school, and so he's very interested in the rights and privileges of different officers, separations of powers on a boat. He's very interested in. He believes in authority, that the captain of the ship needs a captain, but it's not a tyrant captain. And part of the great drama of Dana's book is that there's a tyrant captain, Thompson. He talks about under a tyrant captain, the sailors are slaves on a ship. He talks about the Indians being slaves in a port. He uses that language of slavery rather loosely. Now, so Dana's born into this important family, tied in with the Adamses, and he, in his teenage years, his mother dies when he's like 9 years old. He's born in 1806, I think, and he has a poet for a father, a literary guy. He's an editor of magazines, and then he has a brother. But it's a very quiet household, a very scholarly household, but a very sort of boring household. His church that he goes to is a type of Congregationalist church, which is more Unitarian and sort of, not exciting in terms of like a dedicated super orientation toward Christianity or anything like that. So the Dana, when he's early teenager, becomes very involved in what we call the Second Great Awakening, the sort of Cambridge version of the Second Great Awakening, where evangelicalism became sort of dominant, and Dana actually changes church, and he goes to what we would call youth group at another church, and he becomes fired up about Christianity. Then he goes to Harvard, which is like every this is the college down the street for him, and he goes to Harvard, and in his freshman year, it's all boys there, and they were a bunch of rowdy boys, and there's some windows broken and stuff like that. And the president calls in a group of boys, including Dana, and he says, "Okay, come on, who's doing what? I need you guys to confess." None of them confess. Then he picks on Dana to snitch on the other boys, and Dana won't snitch, and so the president just I'm suspending all of you for a year. You can't come back to Harvard for a year. So Dana, walks back home, and his dad supports him. His dad says, you did the right thing. The Danas are very high-minded people, and you did the right thing. And so, for whatever reason, and this is not clear, but Dad, knew his son's evangelical fervors and stuff, and so sends the boy out to Andover, Massachusetts. Andover had created as a evangelical college up there, a seminary, and had become a real sort of like center of dynamic evangelicalism, especially in terms of missionizing the world. Okay, so there's a lot of missionaries being trained there, and he's going to live with the Woods family. And Woods Sr., the father, is a professor at the college and is one of the major figures of American Bible Society and all sorts of missionary organizations and doing all sorts of stuff. And then there's Woods Jr., who's about 21 years old or so at this time. That's an osprey coming in here. You might see them. There's Woods Jr. is going to be his official tutor, but he's like got his own things going on. And Woods Jr. will go on, and there's the osprey. And Woods Jr. will go on to become a president of Bowdoin College. And so Dana goes out to live with this family, and it's just exciting to him. I mean, dinner table conversation. You have people from all over the world, missionaries, and you have all sorts of exciting conversation about culture and life. And this plays into the book, because you'll see in the book he has a heightened interest of Catholicism and marriage ceremonies and funerals, and he has a real interest in culture and differences between cultures and stuff. And that a lot comes from that missionary table talk, of the Woods family. It doesn't come from the poet dad family, sitting around in silence, at the Cambridge dinner table. No, it's from this other family. The Binghams who missionized Hawaii were that family, and Bingham himself was taught by the Woods and was involved with the Woods and all sorts of things. And then at this time, there are Hawaiians coming to New England, and there at Andover, there's a whole sort of central interest in missionizing the Hawaiians. And so the Pacific Ocean and Pacific Islanders and the Pacific world are very interesting. And sailing around Cape Horn, Dana would have got to sit with missionaries and stuff like that who had sailed around Cape Horn. And so Dana has this large world vision, and he gets it probably a lot from this experience of living out with the Woods in Andover, Massachusetts. And one thing too on the side is there's a girl involved, which is the Woods' daughter, and she's a couple years, 3 years younger, and she takes it upon herself. She's a very bright, scholarly, serious young woman, very strong, and she wants his Christianity to be firmed up, because he's sort of, not fully stabilized with his evangelicalism. And so she prays for him all the time, and she prays for him while he's gone for the 2 years, and she dies right before he gets back. And his mother says to Dana that, this girl prayed for you every day while you were over there, and she prayed that she could, would look after you if she died. And so when Dana gets back from his 2 years, and this is not in the book, but he has told this story about the young girl, and it moves him. He really recommits himself to evangelical Christianity, and you'll see this in other aspects of the later editions of the book, because he gets involved with a lot of discussion of the teaching the Bible and stuff on board. But so it's a very interesting story, this previous story. Dana in the book says it's his eyes. He just wants to go for health reasons, but that's a sort of flippant thing he says. He gets back to Harvard, and he spends a year, but he's bored by Harvard. Harvard is not a very exciting place, and so that's when he then leaves Harvard to spend his 2 years out here in California. So it's a great experience for him. Yeah, we're out here. That's Point Loma. There you go. It's a windy day, and You know, we've had some wildfires and stuff, so the sky has got some smoke in it. But what we're dealing with is Dana, and one of the things to remember about Dana is that he comes out here as a type of coming of age story. You know, he's a troubled child. He's sort of morose. He has depressions throughout his life, and it's usually he goes to sea, he sails, and that's when things go better for him. And so he sails around the world eventually. You know, but it's a type of therapy for him, this travel. And so you see that in the book. Look for his emotions to go up and down, him to get excited. He's a 18, 19, 20 years old when he's out here, and he's trying to figure out his life. And the sea is a great place to do that. It's sort of a great gap year, you know, semester at sea. That's what Point Loma is about. And then in the book, Point Loma is this place for Dana that life becomes good. He loves the people he lives with on shore in the hide houses. Captains are far away, and he can be friends with a bunch of people. He can really enjoy sort of that Jacksonian democracy we talked about, especially the Hawaiians. He takes the Hawaiians on as a sort of special project, learns their language. He had already taught himself Spanish, good with languages, learns the sort of Pigeon Beach language, and has a good time with the Hawaiians. Yeah. Some osprey going by, another sail.